Okay, so that basically wraps up the Whitewater case, which you can see is sleazy, convoluted, and whatnot. Now, the takeaway here pertaining to Hillary is because of the Monica Lewinsky scandal and because the government decided to impeach Bill Clinton and abandon the indictment on Hillary Clinton, you could say, in essence, that Monica Lewinsky actually saved Hillary Clinton from indictment. Anyway, let's continue. When the Clintons first got into the White House in 1993, January of 93, a scandal broke out that very first year called Travelgate. I'll post it up on the screen here and you can read it. But in essence, what happened there was, and you can see in the first line of this Wikipedia article, they say, the first major ethics controversy of the Clinton administration. There are many. In 1993, 7 employees of the White House Travel Office were fired. So basically, the Clintons got into the White House and they said, let's fire the travel staff and bring in our own friends to run the business so they could get paid the fees for running the White House travel staff business. So it broke in the news, and what happened was the Clintons were forced to let their friends go and fire their friends from the White House, which they just put in illegally, and bring back and reinstate the original people that they had fired without cause. Okay, this is in the very first few months the Clintons get to the White House. Okay, let's continue. Okay, so the next scandal happened again in 1993. I'm not going to spend too much time covering it because I don't want to get conspiratorial or whatnot, but I'd be remiss if I didn't actually mention it. It was the death of Vince Foster. Remember Vince Foster? He was a lawyer at the Rose Law Firm with Hillary, very close with Hillary. I believe they actually shared a brokerage account together. Many people rumored that the two were actually having an affair, but whatever. Vince Foster showed up dead one day at Fort Marcy Park in an apparent suicide. Now remember, Vince Foster was brought into the White House by the Clintons. When they got to the White House, they brought Vince Foster to be the chief deputy counsel of the White House. He was the guy that was basically defending the Clintons on many of their conspiracies and investigations. He shows up dead in Fort Marcy Park. The next morning, Linda Tripp, who is a senior White House staffer, an administrative staffer, working directly in the West Wing, across from Vince Foster's office and directly next to Hillary Clinton's office. She says under testimony that the next morning, after Vince Foster was found dead in a controversial suicide, and you can look that up yourself, she saw staffers working for the Clintons removing files from his office. And many people thought that those files were, in fact, the billing records and other documents relating to Hillary's involvement with Rose Law Firm in defending that sleazy Madison Guaranty Savings and Loan. Those billing records, as it turns out, were found in Vince Foster's attic, as I mentioned before, a few years after he died. The other set was found in Hillary's quarters with her fingerprints on them. But anyways, I'll post an article here. I thought it was just really interesting on this note that the controversy surrounding the apparent suicide, because the OIC, again, was investigating this death, and the lead investigator, a guy named Miguel Rodriguez, I'm going to post up his resignation letter up on the screen. And you can see, basically, he was the lead investigator of this apparent suicide. He wrote a report to his boss, Kenneth Starr, at the OIC saying, I don't think it's a suicide. There's inconsistencies here, like a second trauma to the guy's neck, indicating a second bullet wound, etc., etc. I'm not going to get conspiratorial. All I'm going to say is this is the guy that was actually leading the investigation. And because the OIC put out a different narrative claiming that the suicide was obvious, he actually resigned. And this is his resignation letter. I'll just post up on screen. But I don't want to get too much into that. Let's just say it was a big scandal. It happened. He was an associate of the Clintons and really good friends with Hillary, and showed up dead in a park one day. So let's continue. Okay, so continuing in 1993. This is the first year that the Clintons are in the White House. Now, we already have 2 federal criminal investigations involving the Clintons separately with Whitewater. We have the Travelgate controversy, And then we have this healthcare controversy. I'll post a couple of articles on the screen here. But in essence, what happened was Bill appointed his wife, Hillary, in charge of our nation's healthcare system. So this article, I think, came out of Vanity Fair. We'll read it together. Soon after the inauguration, the president declared that his wife would be the Bobby Kennedy of his administration and assigned her the vital job of heading the National Task Force on Healthcare Reform, to amazingly few objections. But since then, Hillary has burrowed deep underground. Her healthcare task force began operations in such secrecy that she was sued in federal court and ordered to open the fact-finding meetings. We'll continue in another article. Bill put his exceptionally unqualified and unelected wife in charge of HillaryCare, the most expensive program in the country. She kept her task force on national healthcare reform away from public access and knowledge, resulting in a federal judge threatening to hold her in contempt. Ultimately, her behemoth plan was rejected by Democrats and Republicans alike and the medical community. The result was a massive revolt in Congress, with the Republicans taking control of both houses for the first time in 4 decades. The price tag for this HillaryCare hit the taxpayer at $32 million. Hillary was fined, along with others, $450,000 for dishonesty, and the court costs to taxpayers were $750,000. So, in Bill's very first year in office, he appoints his wife, who had no idea and had no knowledge of healthcare, in charge of our whole nation's healthcare system. As a result, she, of course, did the whole thing in secrecy, away from everybody. A federal judge threatened to hold her in contempt, and eventually she was taken to court for dishonesty and fined $450,000. They scrapped the entire healthcare plan, and it cost the taxpayers $32 million. So that's Hillary Clinton's first attempt at healthcare, and I think we can all agree we don't want her anywhere near our healthcare system now. Okay, so moving along here, and by the way, just to close the loop on the healthcare fiasco, you know, what's really troubling is not that she failed. I mean, we all fail in certain projects at certain times of our life, but it's the way she handled it, the dishonesty that was mentioned, the secrecy. And this is the pattern that we're continually seeing time and time again. And that's the troubling part about the whole thing. Anyways, so moving along, now we're in 1994, and this is the cattle futures controversy. I'll post an article on the screen here. This is from the Washington Post, and you could take a second to read that. But basically what happened is there was an investigation into Hillary again, and this one was stemming from cattle futures trading. So she opened up an account in Arkansas. Her husband, Bill, is the governor of Arkansas, and she put $1,000 into her account. The very first trade that she made cost $12,000, which she didn't have the money for. But this brokerage firm here, Refco, out of Arkansas, basically covered her investment, which is illegal. And incidentally, her $1,000 investment turned into an over $100,000 profit within 10 months. So there were some things going on here that were pretty shady and illegal. One of which was the person who was counseling her was the outside counsel for Tyson Foods, which was the largest employer in Arkansas. So this is kind of like a pay-to-play type thing. The outside counsel for Tyson Foods is giving Hillary information about the cattle futures markets, and they're using that information to make money. They're buying and selling cattle futures contracts when she doesn't even have the money to buy them. Refco is covering for her, and the whole investigation exploded. And basically it resulted in Refco being fined, I think it was $250,000, which was then the largest fine in the exchange's entire history. So just another example. The thought there was Tyson Foods and their outside counsel were saying, hey, let's give the Clintons some information. Let's let them make some money. And in return, the governor of Arkansas, Bill Clinton, will give us, Tyson Foods, some concessions, tax breaks, other concessions, etc. This is pay to play defined. So that's the whole controversy relating to cattle futures and Hillary Clinton. Okay, so now we're in 1996. And another scandal broke relating to Hillary. This was known as Filegate. I'm going to post an article on the screen. Now, this one's from just Wikipedia because it just gives a nice little encapsulation of what happened. So the White House FBI files controversy. So the White House FBI files controversy of the Clinton administration, often referred to as Filegate, arose in June 1996 around improper access in 1993 and 1994 to Federal Bureau of Investigation's security clearance documents. Craig Livingstone, director of the White House Office of Personnel Security, improperly requested and received from the FBI background reports concerning several hundred individuals without asking permission. The revelations provoked a strong political and press reaction because many of the files covered White House employees from previous Republican administrations, including top presidential advisors. Under criticism, Livingstone resigned from his position. Allegations were made that senior White House figures, including First Lady Hillary Rodham Clinton, may have requested and read the files for political purposes, and that the First Lady had authorized the hiring of the underqualified Livingstone. So what happened here is Hillary told this guy, Craig Livingstone, to go get FBI files relating to certain high-level Republican staff, including presidential advisors. Why? She wanted to have dirt on her adversaries, the Republican Party. And so she had this guy, Craig Livingstone, illegally retrieve these FBI documents so she could just read them and read about their past, their backgrounds, private information, and to hopefully use it against them at some point. So it's just so sleazy. At any rate, so this guy, Craig Livingstone, resigned. And at the bottom of that article, you can see that they refer to him as the underqualified Livingstone. So who is this guy, Craig Livingstone? Well, as it turns out, he was the son of a very close family friend of the Clintons in Arkansas. He had no background in anything. In fact, the position he held before he became the White House Office of Personnel Security. He was working in the White House. Prior to getting into the White House, his job was the bouncer at an Arkansas bar. So this is just, it's disgusting how Hillary, as the First Lady, using her political power to get documents, to steal documents. Do you see the pattern forming here? So at any rate, this was a huge controversy, and it just kind of plays in the same theme as the others. All right, we'll continue. In 1996, there was another scandal that broke involving the Clintons relating to campaign finance. And I'm going to post an article online here, again, from Wikipedia, just because it is a nice summary. You can Google it and find it all over the place, but let's just read it together. So the 1996 United States campaign finance controversy was an alleged effort by the People's Republic of China to influence domestic American politics prior to and during the Clinton administration, and also involved the fundraising practices of the administration itself. While questions regarding the U.S. Democratic Party's fundraising activities first arose over a Los Angeles Times article published on September 1996, China's alleged role in the affair first gained public attention when Bob Woodward and Brian Duffy of the Washington Post published a story stating that a United States Department of Justice investigation into the fundraising activities had uncovered evidence that agents of China sought to direct contributions from foreign sources to the Democratic National Committee. before the 1996 presidential campaign. The journalist wrote that the intelligence information had shown that the Chinese embassy in Washington was used for coordinating contributions to the DNC in violation of the United States law forbidding non-American citizens or non-permanent residents from giving monetary donations to the United States politicians and political parties. A Republican investigator of the controversy stated that the Chinese plan targeted both the presidential and congressional United States elections with Democratic senators, blah, blah, blah. So, I mean, this is just kind of what we're seeing today, and especially with the Clinton Foundation, where they're not supposed to be taking donations from foreign governments, but they do anyway. And when they do, they don't report it as they're supposed to by law. This was going back all the way to 1996. They were doing it for their own campaign. So they were using the Chinese government and working with the Clintons and their administration to donate money to get them reelected. So here we go again. So in the last piece we did, we were talking about the campaign finance investigations. That was affectionately known as Chinagate. But they mentioned in that investigation they were also looking into the improprieties relating to the Clinton Legal Defense Fund. So I thought it would be worthwhile just to take a quick minute just to talk about that a little bit. I'll post an article up on the screen. This is from the Los Angeles Times. So this is a legal defense fund. By now, as everybody realizes, there's so many scandals and so much investigation, conspiracy, cover-ups, etc. going on with the Clintons that they actually needed to set up a legal defense fund for themselves. So the president and the first lady actually set up a legal defense fund and asked the public to donate money into their legal defense fund to help pay for their attorneys to defend them for the crimes that they themselves committed. So this is the article from the Los Angeles Times. Defense fund is set up to help pay Clinton's legal bills. Aides say the call for donations is distasteful but necessary. Lawyers' charges could ring up as much as $2 million per year. So the audacity of this president and his wife Hillary to ask the public to pay for their legal bills for the crap that they got themselves into it just goes to show you this family. Who are these people? But I thought it would make some sense to cover that for a second. All right, so the next topic we move to is called CommerceGate. I'll post an article up on the screen here. This is, I believe it's in 1998. So again, just in summary form, you can Google it and find out all the information, but this summarizes it pretty well. CommerceGate was an event during the Clinton administration which conservatives labeled a scandal. It refers to the selling of extra seats on United States federal planes going on international trade missions for the purpose of raising campaign contributions. Nolanda Hill, a close business associate of Secretary of State Ron Brown, testified in court in 1998 that Brown had told her that trade mission plane seats were sold to business people who gave at least $50,000 each to the DNC. Arguing that to sell seats on a U.S. aircraft was unfair, U.S. District Court Judge Royce Lamberth heard Hill's testimony. Hill stated Brown was angered when White House political staff, this is the Clintons, made him give seats on trade missions for fundraising. Hill said Brown told her the main person involved at the White House was Alexis Herman, who would later become Clinton's labor secretary. Hill further claimed that Brown had told her that an assistant to Herman, Melissa Moss, wrote the original contribution letters which had angered Brown. Hill also testified that Brown had told her that President Bill Clinton and Mrs. Clinton supported the plan to sell seats for contributions. Investigation led to supposed improprieties in the finances of Secretary Brown. A federal judge later found that a U.S. Commerce Department official appeared to have deliberately destroyed subpoenaed documents relating to the department's trade missions to China. Brown died on a trade mission to Croatia when the government plane crashed into a mountainside in Croatia in 1996. This led to conservative accusations that Clinton had Brown murdered. Yeah, this actually happened. So, to summarize this, it basically speaks for itself, but the Clintons basically forced the Commerce Secretary, Ron Brown, to sell seats on U.S. government aircraft that were going on international trade missions to people who donated to their campaign of at least $50,000. So here we are going on a trade mission on a U.S. federal aircraft. There's empty seats on the plane, and they're selling those seats to Clinton supporters for $50,000 a pop. Who does this? And then one of the planes crashed and killed the Commerce Secretary, Ron Brown, who was angered by the whole thing, and he was threatening to go public with these allegations, and lo and behold, he dies in a plane crash.